Tinder Effect is a little porno-y, a little bit, but not really. It's softer. So, Stephen, you introduced us to an idea. It was a very simple chart that provided some data that I was absolutely shocked and floored by. And I feel like we've just been talking about this ever since, and in shock at the reality of what is happening. And just for context, we're all in our 30s, and I think that a lot of what's happening to people in their early 30s and 20s is very different from the reality that we experienced growing up into adolescence and becoming adults. The world has completely changed. So what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of a combination of two things, right? So I saw this stat about men 18 to 30, and it was just a simple question have you had sex in the last year? And in 2008, I think 17% of men said they hadn't. And recently that number has jumped up to 30. So we've almost doubled that number in basically a decade. And I was like, oh man, there's some stuff going on. And I know that this is kind of a trend because I like to kind of keep tabs on what's going on the internet. And there are these movements, right? We obviously know about the incel movement, right? But there's also kind of a medium in between incel, not really incel movement.
I forgot. What is the incel movement?
Involuntarily celibate. They're all the kind of angry.
Voluntarily.
Yeah.
Okay.
They can't get laid. But there's this other movement of men online called MGTOW, which is men going their own way.
This one really
where they're
away.
We could get laid, but we kind of are over women because they suck, and we're just going to do these other things instead, right? So it's one over. So there's a lot of these movements going on, and we hear all the memes about Chad and Becky and stuff like that all the time that these people talk about. But this led me to a Medium post by at Worst Online Dater, which is a funny thing to brand your Medium as. And they write about a lot of online dating stuff and with a lot of data. So there's a lot of really interesting data and analysis in this post. I could just pull some stats that jumped out at me. They basically concluded that the bottom 80% of men are competing for the bottom 22% of women, and the top 78% of women are competing for the top 20% of men. So there's this kind of real... It's like what we had in the real old tribal days where basically the big gorilla would sort of get all of the women, and then the men would just sort of fight to the death to kind of get that. It was kind of a bad thing for society. That's why we started kind of doing the we'll pair off.
Where do you guys place yourself on that spectrum? What's your inbound demand?
I'm the biggest gorilla in town, buddy. This back is silver.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everybody here is doing okay, but I have sympathy for people out there who maybe aren't, and this is why. They did a thing on the Gini coefficient, which is an economic measure of inequality, the distribution of wealth in society, and equated it to Tinder. So if Tinder was a country, it would be in the 96th percentile of inequality in terms of who gets all the spoils. The medium woman is getting 35 times as many likes per week as the medium man.
What about
and an average man has to have 115 women go through 115 women just for one to like him, right? So it's
well, hold on, because I think that data can be skewed by just sort of behavioral differences.
Yes.
When I was in San Francisco living with three dudes, these guys would wake up in the morning, and before they even went up to pee, they would just be like this for 10 minutes, just right, just getting the pipeline loaded. So of course
pipeline loaded.
But that doesn't
wasn't
answer
you, of course.
That's you're looking at that from the other way,
But of course, they're getting more swipes if dudes are just doing this.
No, it's not a matter of swipes. It's a matter of women not picking more so than men swiping with high volume. And there's just kind of really massive imbalance of how the two sexes behave on Tinder. But I'm curious to kind of go back to the original stat where a lot of dudes aren't having sex anymore, and I'm curious what you guys think the root cause is, because I don't think it's just.
Well, you got me going on Tinder, and now you want to go backwards. Like I think the incentives on Tinder are a little bit broken because you can't see who liked you, so it's always in your benefit to like. You know, you want to give yourself the optionality rather than. But
only a
left.
man does. Only a man does. And so I actually, to argue your point, like the behavioral bias of men versus women, the women are looking for different things. Like the man just wants to know, the dude just wants to know, is this going to be an option? What are my options? Tell me what my options are in the first place. Who's my match? Speaking, by the way, as someone who's never used any of these dating apps. And then the woman is actually consciously, diligently going through the process of assessing the individual and determining if they deserve the swipe. Absolutely. I've had so many friends tell me, like, they'll look and just based on the look and a couple quotes on Hinge or whatever, be like, yeah, okay, dating or marriage material. I would, because they know that the moment that they say yes, you're going to show up like a fucking hound dog in their DMs being like, what's up? What's up? You want a drink? What do you want to do? And like, I've heard worse things, by the way. Like I know people that just literally go like, you're hot. Like, you down to hook up? Like, and just go straight for it. So they don't want that in the first place. So many of them want to protect themselves from that behavior in the first place. So they have to have that wall up of making sure that they're choosing appropriately. And that is a major part of what's skewing the data, for sure, on Tinder at least.
Kid was married before even dating apps came out. Like, you got strong opinions for someone who was, locked up before all this stuff even came out. I agree with you, but I'm just poking at you because, you haven't really played.
I take offense with Eric's analysis of this too, that the reason the match rate is 1 out of 115 is because guys swipe a lot. That's totally backwards, right? As a guy, right? If you are indiscriminately swiping on everything, your conversion rate should go up. Like if you only swiped on 10s and you were a 5, your conversion rate would be like 1 in every 10,000 girls, right?
You took the wrong metric that I was arguing. I was arguing the metric that girls get more likes than guys. Yeah, girls obviously get more likes than guys.
I was just trying to like focus in on the despair of the poor 80 percentile man on online dating apps who's just getting absolutely wrecked.
Let's take it back there. Let's take it back there. Because I
do have a question though. I have a very important question. What is the data on women and sex? Are they abstaining or not having it as well?
No, they're going
the same.
They're having a great time.
Steady.
Yeah, there's a
steady. Is it rising?
Large divergence. I don't think it's no. It's risen slightly. Women now are 18%, and I think but they were like 14%, 15% in 2005. So it hasn't changed a lot, but it has ticked up, and I think there are some reasons why both have ticked up.
I have a very hot take. Okay.
Oh, give it to me.
I got a hot take, and then I got to go run to the bathroom. You guys keep talking. I've got too much liquid here. Okay, so this is like one of those like literally pulling it out of my ass takes, but I think there might be something to it. Why do I think that men are not having as much sex as they used to and as frequently? Okay. The first thing about a man attracting a woman in the first place is knowing how to talk to her in real life. No matter how good your game is via text, you eventually have to show up and you have to overcome a few hurdles that this person, this woman, has for you to qualify you to ever want to engage with you sexually, right? So if you never really grew up in an environment where you practiced that in the first place, you basically have the equivalent of a lack of game. You never walked into the bar and just talked to women. You never learned how to take them out on a date. Maybe you're more the romantic type. You don't want to just hook up, but you never even had an opportunity to practice that. Maybe you do just want to have sex and you want to hook up, and you get overly excited on that date when you finally meet up and you throw them off and they want to run away from you. And I think that really what you ultimately have here is a bunch of guys that are growing up in I'm going to be boomer about this. I think that the social media aspect of things, the online dating aspect of things has made so many dudes. I mean, how many times do you guys go to the bar with our friends, with friends in general, or just watching and observing, and you watch and you see that the way things used to look and behave was people used to actually mingle. There was more of this like walking over to the table with girls, saying hello, buying them the drinks, flirting, saying something funny, just like banter. And all that banter is gone. Most of it, at least. Like some guy's gonna say, "Oh, I still have game. I still go out. I still do this." Like my brother is one of those. He still does great when he goes out, right? But he also is on the apps. Why is that? Why has that decreased? Because they know that they can go home drunk at the end of the night, open the app, and that's where they're going to get the high. That's where they're going to engage. That's where they won't get rejected. All they have to do is swipe, and then eventually they'll match with someone and they can go into DMs and maybe have a chance at meeting up in person, only to fuck it up all over again by the time they actually get out in person. Because they really need to be doing is exercising the muscle of masculinity. And I don't mean masculinity like this traditional like masculinity. No. I'm talking about the energy that makes the opposite gender attracted to you in the first place. That feeling that like, wow, okay, this is a responsible person. This is a secure person. This is an attractive person. This is a person with charisma. This is a person who just knows how to even walk and sit and eat. And then they're like, yeah, okay. Like, and look, like it's gotten to a point where over the pandemic, like a lot of girls, like, I mean, all my girlfriends, told me they're like, man, I'm just hooking up like anybody who wants to. And guys said the same thing. So like, I think that things were different during the pandemic, but in general, I blame Tinder. I think that Tinder is the problem. I think people have lost the ability to talk to one another, to show up and go on dates and hook up. And I think that they overly rely on these apps and porn. I think that porn is probably the other biggest reason if we want to go back to the last episode. I really believe that like they go home, they swipe on Tinder, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to anybody who actually does any of these things. I don't mean it with disrespect. I mean it with like, I think this is where things have landed. So if you're hearing that and it sounds true to you and it resonates, then it's like, man, yeah, maybe I should like abstain a little bit, because I think the combination of swiping and porn and that instantaneous dopamine that I can finish and get that sensation and that feeling and not need to get the risk of getting rejected is a major part of why people aren't having sex. Okay, I'm gonna go pee now.
You're relieved to relieve yourself.
That was a good rant. Good rant. Go pee.
Which one of you guys wants to respond to that first? I'll give you the floor.
I kind of agree. Like he's basically saying there's less hunters out there. Like there's less guys going out and hunting in real life. And I think what he's really saying is like there's a dopamine replacement going on, right? Like you definitely get dopamine by interacting with the opposite sex when you're single, and like, having that high come from that mingling. And maybe that there's a combination of dating app dopamine and porn dopamine kind of coming into play and replacing that, in our internal chemistry in our brains. And maybe it's satisfying some part enough where people, or maybe I shouldn't say people, but men are just like kind of getting the dopamine they need from that. And that's obviously not good, because Darwin would say natural selection is taking place and your gene pool will not survive on to the next. I don't know. I kind of get what he's saying in terms of like dopamine replacement.
I do too. Can I go, Stephen, before you go? I think like what I'm seeing now is like kind of what Stephen was bringing up before, which is like, let's talk to the guy who's struggling, right? Because if you're on the apps and you're in the top 20%, you're getting all the chicks and it's so easy for you. You're probably also the guy who's going to the bar and it's like very easy too. Like, I guess like we probably all know a friend of ours who's like not Cristiano Ronaldo, but like does well in real life, like at the bar scene, right? Like just because they have the charisma and the swag and whatever, and they can like kind of like, be attractive despite not being just like a gorgeous aesthetic. But where it takes my mind is kind of like, isn't it all the same? Like, so you're swiping and it's like a very materialistic, surface level, aesthetic driven thing. But it's the exact same in real life. You know, like you go to the bar and the guy who looks freaking gorgeous and is all, you know, the same guy is like getting the same love in real life. So like I think it's very similar. But to Armand's point, like if you're not that guy, you do have to build another skill set. You got to be like the funny guy. You got to be like the charmer. You got to be like some charismatic. You got to like build a different skill set if you're not the Cristiano Ronaldo.
That's true.
Well,
And
I love that you're bringing that up, Eric. That like, you know, looking at this is a question of like just a person of anywhere in the world, average, however, in the eye of the beholder looks, and is trying to go out there and meet somebody and struggling. And so obviously it's like maybe even going to the bar is not a really cool or good or comfortable situation for that person in the first place. And so they have to find their game. And I think that's why game theory became so popular for so long. And I don't know much about it. I never really looked into it. I only heard like in passing. We have a good friend who you know, you guys all know, who worked with him, Mystery, and you know, the person who developed this whole game theory thing. And so I've just over the years of hearing that stuff like picked up on it.
Theory.
And
you're talking about the book, The Game.
Like
is that?
Game.
Is that
yes,
what, yeah.
yes.
Stephen was about to go Prisoner's Dilemma.
Yeah.
Stephen.
I'm like,
Stephen
what does
was
Nash
Prisoner's
have to
Dilemma.
do with dating? Like, I don't understand.
No, I'm talking about dating. I'm talking about
Yep.
picking up chicks.
Nash was a big
which
womanizer.
a lot of people hate on, but actually ended up truly transformed from as far as I can tell and seen looking outside, you know, outside looking in, changed the lives of a lot of men and a lot of women for the better who found somebody because that person built up the ability to have some courage, to have some self-confidence, to have some charisma, to go and make those moves and those comments that eventually lead to love. And sometimes it led to, from what I've heard, manipulation and games. No pun intended, because I think a lot of like actually what happens with this whole game theory and dating is a lot of bullshit games and a lot of like pecking and insulting the woman in order to get her attention and just weird things like that.
Negging.
But I think nagging, yeah. But I think if done correctly, owning. So maybe do you guys want to keep going on like why this is happening? But I just going to give like one thing that I think is like
I want you to go where you're passionate, man.
What I'm passionate about is I think that there's something that a lot of men don't understand. The way to attract a woman is, this came up in our text thread the other day, and Eric and I were debating this a little bit. There was a video of
Morgan Freeman
saying that never chase a woman, let her come to you. And then Eric was like, strong disagree. But I think we were speaking past each other. So let's like now have the moment where we speak to each other about it. I believe that the right way to attract a woman is to own your entire sense of self and not be overly focused on her. So to a certain point, I agree with Mr. Freeman that like you want to give her a little attention. If she's in the bar, you don't want to not say hi. You don't want to be invisible. You want to give her the attention. You want to flirt. You want to do the thing when you hit it up in the DMs. You want to be direct, but you also want to show that you have a life of your own. You have a sense of yourself. You have your friends. If you're in the bar and she suddenly stops paying attention to you when you're trying to talk to her, immediately stop giving her the attention. Because if you keep on like being aggressive when she's showing you like, I'm not into this conversation, you lost already. Like if you go for another 10 seconds after that, you lose. So that moment, turn your attention towards something else and let the light, the metaphorical light in the room, shine on you. It sounds crazy. Steven's laughing, but I have done this.
The romance novel, you guys. It's amazing.
So many times to great effect. And my wife's going to be okay with this because she often asks me like, what was your dating life like? And she doesn't care. I had a way of being able to shine the light on myself in a way where it was like I wasn't doing anything. I was just owning my zone and being myself and not being like, oh, please like me, and blah blah blah, and like just all my hands and knees. What that does is when you show who you really are, and she sees other people looking at you and you're in your zone and you're in your element, that's the attractive element that starts to shine. And then they go, wow, this guy's actually like legit. He wasn't just like trying to hit on me, and he was just saying hello. And then all of a sudden, next time you come up to her, you notice her demeanor changes, you notice her attitude changes, you give her a little, you walk away again, you give her a little, you walk away again. So I agree with you, Eric, that like you have to hunt. You have to hunt. Women want the directness. They want you to tell them what they want. They don't want you to wait. They want you to, most of the time, by the way, we're talking like very generally here, they want you to tell them, this is what I want. I want you. I think you're beautiful. I think you're hot. I think we should go on a date. I think we should whatever. But you have to play a bit of a game. It's a bit of a dance, because if you're overbearing, you have to back off a little bit and let them come to you.